if you had only 5 hours left on this planet, however you think that's going to end, 5 hours, remind yourself, what would you do with that last 5 hours? Everyone I've ever chatted with, and me and myself included, is it would be spent with the people I care most about, having a beautiful conversation, sharing laughter, sharing joy, seeing what they're doing to be successful and prosperous and happy in their lives. That. So remind yourself of that. If you're having a bad day, just have a great conversation. It costs nothing and anyone can do it.
You are now listening to the podcast where authors inspire listeners to become authors, the Going North Podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer, best-selling author, and book enthusiast, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be listening to a different author that will inspire you to join the business of immortality, known as authorship. Now let the fun begin. Today's episode is sponsored by both books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and the follow-up bestseller, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Head over to Amazon.com, pick up both books. They are available in a trifecta of paperback, audio, and ebook. Cop all three of both and be on the lookout for another book from yours truly to help podcasters succeed. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the highlight reel builder for authors known as the Going North Podcast, we got another super special, awesome human for you today. That's right indeed. And this one's courtesy of my good buddy way up north in good old New York, Jenny from the Business Block, aka Jennifer Glass. Indeed, that's right indeed, because she's hooked me up with one heck of a super special, awesome human indeed, because today's guest, in particular, a special guest, one of those rare chances where I get to interview the author of a book I actually read a few freaking years ago that actually helped me to have personal growth. And today's guest in particular going to be in for a treat that's good enough to eat 5 times over, because today's best-selling bookcaster, you heard that right, folks, best-selling bookcaster, because he's both an author and a podcast host. He's a keynote speaker, U.S. Marine veteran, as well as a global behavior expert, as well as an FBI master spy recruiter. So let's give it up for the R&D. And we ain't talking about research and development, but we're talking about the one and only Robin K. Dreeke. How you doing, hey, Robin?
Dom, I could just listen to you all day. You are so smooth and melodious. I could just sit here and sap it all up. So thanks for having me on. It's a true pleasure. And so, yeah, shout out to Jennifer, who is the world's greatest connector, no doubt.
Heck yeah, that's right indeed. She keeps all the glasses full. That's right indeed.
Definitely she does.
That's right indeed. From water to wonderful air to breathe.
Absolutely.
So my goodness. So what led you to become a master spy recruiter, man, for the FBI? Was that something that was on your mind at the age of 13 and it's like you were able to embrace your dream, or did you just have a Paul to the Damascus moment where a recruiter got you at the right moment and you woke up in a uniform?
Yeah, pretty much a ladder. First of all, great job going for the arc of life, which I absolutely love. Everyone's got an arc, and you discover that origin point, and it becomes that ship that just starts sailing. No, recruiting spies and doing FBI stuff was not the way in which I thought I was going to run my life. I wanted to be an astronaut. I failed at everything. So picking that time frame you did, the arc started like this, and that was I was recruiting, but not spies my entire life. I was recruiting allies my entire life. Kind of in the pre-show, we talked briefly. I grew up in upstate New York, north of New York City. Anything above New York City is upstate. And my family never owned a home, no money. Dad was 23 when he got his girlfriend of 21 pregnant. They got married 6 months later. And out popped me, no college education, still never owned a home. And so when I remember when I was like 9 years old and the house that we were renting, the furnace broke and we had to heat it all by wood, because we actually bought the last money we had. We spent on a wood burning stove. We installed a wood burning stove for $400, never told the landlord. And we started chopping wood, and I chopped wood for many years to heat the house, had to chisel your way out the door in the morning because it froze overnight because all the condensation would run down on the inside because it was below freezing inside till you started the fire in the morning. And if you wanted school clothes, you better go mow lawns and do that. I mean, I was born in '68, so the hardcore Gen Xers, we are extremely resilient and self-reliant and gritty. And so at that age, I wanted to be an astronaut. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And it took me taking the SAT 7 times just to get the minimum score to even get an application to go to Naval Academy because that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Naval Academy because either that or nothing because I had no money. And it took me next year to get in. Those fools should not make a guy like me or allow a guy like me to major in aerospace engineering. That lasted only barely a semester, failed out of that, majored in just graduation at that point. Almost took me an extra little time to get out. Went Marine Corps. And in the Marine Corps, I quickly learned that those great life skills that we've been sharing about grit, resilience, and self-reliance, they're fantastic life skills that most of us, that when you're trying to survive at a young age in a house full of great addictions and lacking of things, you have great resources for making yourself feel safe and doing that, but it makes you very self-centered. So I thought being popular and making it about me was leadership, and no, it was not. And so I had some good humbling moments along the way that I learned that if you want to actually lead someone, you actually have to take those great skills that you had for survival and now reverse them and make them outward. When I was my last duty station in the Marine Corps was at Parris Island as a series and company commander down there for Marine Corps boot camp. Learned a lot of things, so I was starting to get it. And I went in the FBI. They had a recruiter come to the down to Parris Island, and they said, "We think Marine Corps officers make great FBI agents." And I said, "Okay, I'll try that." It was not on the radar of something I wanted to do. Went through new agent training, got assigned to New York field office. I was in Manhattan for many years. I was there during 9/11. I watched 8 people jump from the North Tower. I had an engine land about 30 feet from my car. So I was there doing that whole thing. But anyway, my entire time in the FBI was working counterintelligence. I got assigned to do that in New York, and my job primarily was recruiting Russian spies. Well, really, they're called intelligence officers at the United Nations. Got our behavioral team. Then I was in charge of our behavioral team. Then I taught all this stuff at Quantico about how to basically recruit allies in life. And it all comes down to the most important thing ever is forging trust, free of subterfuge, manipulation. It's about honesty, transparency, openness, vulnerability. There you go. So that's life in a nutshell from 13 to now. Oh, 2 kids that are awesome and wonderful and been married over 30 years.
Woo! There we go.
Bam, got it
That's what
all.
I'm There we go. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's something majorly to be proud of too, especially to still be married to after the good old pandemic year, and also be a dad too. It's like, yeah, double win. You love to see it. That's right, indeed. Quadruple win plus with all the wonderful accolades and humble pie experiences that eventually led to apple pie, metaphorically speaking.
Love that. Humble pie leading to apple pie. That's a good one.
That's right, indeed. Because hey, at the end of the day, when folks look at your resume, be like, "Oh, that's an apple of my eye kind of guy right there."
That's a resume of a lot of learned failure.
But hey, like you have all this confidence now and all the life experience where it's like the failure really doesn't really matter as much now that you got all those successes under your belt. So my goodness, like what helped you to really have that mindset after all that hard work and grit to realize, you know what? If failure's really just going to be that propeller fuel for the future to get your level of success, what helped you to really get that mindset and to keep it?
Always, and that's the most important thing is all along the way as I faced, and we all do, this is not a special story. We all face challenges in life, and the difference between people that are going to use that challenge to propel to the next one. And I say challenge, some people call challenge failure. I never felt like I failed. I felt like I faced challenges, and then I never felt like a victim. I guess that's the best thing in this whole entire thing. I never felt like a victim. I never blamed someone else for what was going on. I owned it all the time. I always took accountability for what I did wrong or what I could have done better, because saying you did something wrong is self-loathing, and that's never helpful. But what I could have done a little bit differently to change the outcome for a better outcome than what I had. And so, and probably one of the most profound ones when I first hit the Marine Corps. I'm a brand new second lieutenant, and I finally got through the Naval Academy. I finally felt like, all right, I got this. I'm popular. People like me. I love being a Marine. And I got ranked dead last out of all the second lieutenants where I was serving at Cherry Point, North Carolina, 14 out of 14. Another humbling moment. And I go to my rating officer and I say, okay, sir, I get it. I own it. I'm doing something wrong. What am I doing wrong? And he says, that's easy. Just be a better leader. When you don't have a context because your self context, your own confirmation bias is that you're a good leader and someone says you're not, you don't know what to do with that. Because like all of us, if someone says you're off or you're wrong and you don't understand that context that they have, which is empathy, it befuddles you. And so I kind of looked puzzled and I asked him, okay, if you say so, I accept that. What do I do differently? He goes, oh, that's easy too. You need to make it about everyone else but yourself. Again, a statement that totally blew my mind. I had no idea what he's talking about. So basically, this Marine Corps major, when I was 23, laid down the gauntlet, said, hey, you are too full of grit, resilience, and tenacity. Those are great skills, but those are inwardly focused about me. What you need to be a leader, you need to make it about other people. You need to be a service to them. You need to figure out what their jobs are and make their jobs easier. You need to figure out what the challenges, priorities, and pain points of others are and be a resource for them overcoming them. That's what leadership is. And so that's when I got it. And it slowly started infusing in me. And so then it becomes down to, and you said it a few minutes ago, you used that word confidence. Yes, there's a certain amount of confidence we all must have, but also everything in life is a dichotomy. The other dichotomy you must have to balance out confidence so it doesn't become arrogance is humility. It's a beautiful dichotomy. It's probably the most challenging behavioral dichotomy in each of us to balance is the confidence, because no one wants to deal with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, someone who doesn't have enough confidence to move forward and take initiative, but also someone who's got the humility to listen with 2 ears, one mouth, and keep the mouth shut, to constantly be a student, constantly be a learner, constantly owning the behavior when something goes sideways. And the most important thing when you're balancing these two dichotomies is to forge trust. And to do that, you need to make people feel safe. In order to make people feel safe, the greatest things you can do that you can own is be transparent, be open, be honest, and be vulnerable. It's actually that simple. Hard to do because their dang ego gets in the way, but there you go.
Oh yeah, I hear you on that one too, because it's like, yeah, it's like especially in your early 20s like that, where it's like you got the sense of invincibility, where it's like, oh, yeah, I could take on the world, like twist the neck, oh, fine, twist it back and walk it off. It's like, oh crap, I'm at the bottom of class, 14 out of 14. Like, oh, what do I need to do? I'll be a better leader. Oh, I thought I was good already. What the heck does that mean now?
Start from zero.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. And funny enough with the vulnerability, and you mentioned empathy, it actually reminds me. I'm not sure if that was in Sizing People Up or the Code of Trust book, but the concept of stoicism with
Oh yeah,
empathy.
it's empathy, right?
Yes, indeed. So was that also something you gained through your time in the military? Or was that more honed in your time in the FBI?
It's kind of a lifetime. I think I first started seeing the dichotomy and the merging of these multiple worlds, and I'll talk about it here, probably in the FBI. And it was a sizing people up. Great job, by the way, picking out that word. So I call it stempathy. It's a combination of stoicism and empathy. And stoicism from the standpoint of be pragmatic, be objective when looking at a challenge and looking at what are you going to do to solve it, because that takes process and procedure. So always asking what questions instead of why questions. You have to understand the greater why, like Simon says, start with why, and understanding the why or the mission or the purpose of what you're doing is important. But the what questions are really the important ones, because that makes people be specific. And that's a very stoic approach to things, because the stoicism is about problem solving. But you need to combine that with empathy, big time, because empathy is about understanding the world through someone else's context, their lens, their optic, their generation, orientation, gender. I mean, you name it, all of it, it comes into play when trying to understand someone else. And part of ways we can do that is dive deep. I mean, you obviously dove deep, just prepping for this interview. You looked at the books I've written, you looked at the bio, you knew enough to actually get a couple excerpts out of them, which is fantastic. It's very validating. So you consumed what I was outputting to understand context. And so half of the things I read a tremendous amount, and half the things I read are for my own interest. The other half is what I read that the people around me read and consume. I want to understand everyone around me. When you can do that without judgment, to understand the context from someone else's point of view, and that's the bedrock for everything we're talking about. Curiosity, non-judgmental curiosity. I mean, even before we started, hearing about where you grew up in Baltimore, I've been there, I know it. I went to Annapolis, and I have good friends that still live there. Seeing if you actually grew up there, moved there later, see, all these things give us that context. Just being the podcast with all those reps that you have, I have a baseline of understanding of your ability to sit there. I see you being present, hearing every single word I say, choosing what you're going to go with on next, because you have reps. You have reps of listening, pay attention, and being present, which is the greatest gift you can give someone. So that's what you do when you combine stoicism and empathy. Is, I guess it comes down to being pragmatic at the same time. I give the greatest gift of your presence to someone, where you're just listening without an agenda.
Man, to that, and thanks so much for the compliment too, because that's some of pride myself forward of when guests come on, because it's like, hey, you're sharing some of your time and expertise here. It's like, hey, I need to at least do my homework at least.
Beautiful.
Yes, indeed. And that Sizing People Up book, definitely heavily useful, and just the whole sympathy word just stuck out to me because I feel like that's something that's really necessary today, especially with mental health being the major topic that it is. And a lot of people nowadays are so impatient that they sometimes forget empathy, and sometimes even not even having enough of, I guess, wherewithal, or maybe not even had the chance to really train or hone in that pragmatism to be stoic and try to have at least a calm head in the crazy moments. So my goodness, any tips for folks out there to maybe to be a little bit more calm in a storm, since my man's a master at that?
You know, you hit another such a sticking point in society right now. I get called on to do a lot of different news programs, and they have me do a lot of true crime stuff, and most of them are the murder cases and everything. And all we're seeing nonstop, more and more every day, is a lack of people with the ability to problem solve. It's caused by mental health, the challenges that we're facing there. It's caused by how we're being brought up and coddled by our parents and society, that someone, if we have a problem, someone steps in at an early age to solve it for us. And so by all of a sudden we go, which is the worst thing in life, when you go from 0 to 100, your car is going to fall apart. And so when young adults or even teenagers or any human being tries to go from no problem to any problem, their minds freak out because they've had no problem solving skills. And part of that is empathy and understanding the context of someone else. Society's lost our reps in understanding others, because like when I grew up, I had probably 9, 10, 12 jobs before I even got out of high school. I guarantee you this, my parents have no idea what jobs I had. They were not part of that life. They were busy trying to make money, to trying to survive as well. Went out and got my own jobs. From young ages, we had our own problem solving skills, and that's a generational thing. It's not, and no generation is better or worse than anything else, but it's reps at an earlier age. And so what's happening as young adults are hitting the workplace and hitting society, and they're doing what my son and daughter call adulting. A lot of the problem solving skills aren't there yet. And part of that problem solving skills is empathy. Sometimes people get so hung up on trying to shove problems in people's faces without understanding why they feel that way to begin with. Great example. We've done this for years. I used to do this for years all the time inside the FBI. If you're going to try to recruit a confidential human source or intelligence officer or a spy, it's this beautiful art form of trying to create a beautiful engagement. It takes months and months and months to put together this perfect mosaic. It's like Leonardo da Vinci worked on Mona Lisa for 15 to 16 years until he died. Like he brought Mona Lisa with him everywhere he went. It was a work of art in process, because as he learned something new, a new brushstroke here, a new pigment here, that's how he worked on it. Same thing with human interaction. It's an art form. It's something to be cherished. It's something to put a lot of effort into. And when you just dive deep like that and understand that context, that's part of it, where you're crafting this beautiful engagement. And if you're not going to take the time to do it, or you don't know how to do it, the best thing you can do is have people in your life, good, healthy relationships. A lot of times when we get emotionally hijacked and we start, as I call it, crazy brain kicks in, we start trying to come up with our own solutions. We are not good at that, because when we're emotionally tied to the outcome, we make bad choices most of the time. That's why we have in life a loving critic, someone who's completely vested in our success, but not vested in our outcome. That way, mine is my wife, maybe a good friend, someone who cares deeply, but can tell you truth bombs when you need them, and pull back your reins. And most importantly, you can't be defensive when they tell you you are off and you are wrong and you need to shift and you need to shut up and you need to do all these things that don't want to do. Because ends, for these other instances, when you see someone in pain, you got to touch that pain, because that pain can escalate and go from 0 to 100 too fast. And again, when people are in pain, they're in trauma, a trauma trigger happens in their life, and they go from 0 to 100 to solve that problem with an unhealthy outcome. That's when you have to step in and help touch that pain before it happens. Anyway, long answer. I do too many monologues. Apologize.
Oh, no need to apologize. We encourage length here. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. And before I go south with that joke, you said something very powerful, like a loving critic, because it's like funny enough, that actually reminds me of probably a few hundred episodes ago, Doug Vermeer, who was a guest
Hmm.
on the show, where he talks about the good sides of really having a true critic who's looking out for weak points that you can make stronger, and really taking your strengths and making them stronger indeed. So it's great that you put those two words together. Like I feel like that's the first I've ever heard those two words together. Folks like critic, like, oh God, it's like, oh wait, there's a loving critic. Someone actually
Loving.
cares
Yes.
about your situation, wants you to be better.
Yeah, actually, and I'll tell you where that came from. I use it all the time, but if I can remember where I get things from, I always give credit where it's due. Tasha Eurich, she wrote a book called Insight a number of years ago, which is a book on self-awareness, and she did the research and studies behind people and their own self-awareness and mindfulness. It's funny because people, I think the study said something like 85% of people think they're very self-aware, but when you actually put it to the science, it's more like 30%. But she said one of the best things you can do for your self-awareness is have a loving critic that can be that person. And I adopted it as part of a good life coach, someone, a partner in your life of movement forward, that can be that loving critic. But boy, you got to listen. That's the hardest part, because we get so insecure, we get so defensive when they have constructive feedback to give us, even when it's unsolicited sometimes, because that sometimes needs to save us. You have to let them feel safe to give you that information, because if you start fighting it, you start shutting them down, you're going to shut down the most valuable flow of information you ever get. And that's the stuff that's coming at you to keep you safe, to keep you moving forward, to keep you on point in life. But if you start getting too defensive and insecure because you don't want to hear some of the truth bombs that someone loving wants to give you, you might be setting yourself up for a more humbling moment again.
I can definitely see that again. Definitely see that again, indeed. Because hey, it's so true. Because it's like you might as well prepare and have a good counsel, wise counsel around you. So that way, it's like, oh yeah, these mistakes, these ain't mistakes no more. These are all polished up. The enemy can't see none of them because they don't exist. We prepared. Had a loving critic on the side.
Absolutely.
So my goodness, so since you've been on so many interviews on both sides of the microphone as a host and the guest, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often?
You actually asked it. I love the life arc question. It was like, what started it all those years ago? That's my favorite question, because that's mine too. It's like getting that spark earlier in life, and seeing that arc. Everyone, I know you see this. You see when you hear that origin story that people have, and I'm doing my little fingers like this. You see that little origin story that people's have, and you can see that arc that they take. And then if there's a blip that goes off the arc, life's getting more challenging, difficult there, because it went away from that compelling thing. One thing I enjoy hearing And so here's a question, and I've been working on this one myself too, is who was it that gave you that positive encouragement at a key moment that set that cycle in motion? Because we all have three things in common in life, and that is death, birth, and trauma slash significant event at around that age 13, like you said. And I say trauma and or significant event because it can be a very positive event too, that kind of gives us that spark that says, I want to do that. And so that's always a good one too.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Powerful one too, and I'm actually glad you mentioned the encouragement piece too, because yeah, we may have come across at least one person who's encouraged us at least once in our lives, indeed. So my goodness, was there anyone in particular? Was it that I guess that officer, or I forgot the proper title. I'm glad I didn't know
Yeah,
his name,
yeah, the
so he can't
major.
find
Yeah.
me. Yeah, the major was the major who said, "Hey, you got to work on your leadership skills." Like, was there a big encourager that really helped you to really have the success that you have today?
There's key ones all along the way, as we all have. We have guides and mentors that enter our lives without even realizing it. If I could go back and do a lot of things again, I wouldn't do much different because you'd love who you are today, and so you relish those things that brought you to where you are today. One of the things I would have done different is when I was 20 years old, I would have told my 20-year-old self, stop trying to focus on being successful, look around you and help those around you be successful. And the other was be much more conscious and cognizant of creating mentors and guides in your life because they're always there. The ones that saw the greatness in you that you weren't seeing yet were always inserting themselves in your life at the right time. And those are the ones that I wish was more aware of at the moment so I could just give them a big hug of thanks and recognize it. And I've tried like heck to go back and find some of them and give them the thanks. That matter of fact, that one major who gave me that rating, he doesn't remember it. I'm connected with him on Facebook, and I told him that story. I tell his story all the time about what he did to kind of help me move forward. And he's like, I don't even remember that. Did I say that to you? That's horrible. He felt really bad about saying something like that. I said, no, 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 that was perfect. I go back to high school because those are when those formative things happen. I had a couple, like one or two high school football coaches that were encouraging. I had a couple science teachers that were the same. I didn't know how out of sync I was on certain aspects, like financial and things like that. It's funny, you never feel like you don't have anything until later in life and you look back. And when people are saying, boy, I'm so glad you made it. And I'm like, made what? And he goes, out of there. And I'm like, out of what? It's like, it seemed fine to me. I was making a lot of coin. I was working my ass off. I had a lot more money than my parents did. They were the idiots. So it was just there was quite a few key ones that came in there. I'll never forget this. Also, the school resource officer we had, when he heard I was trying to go to the Naval Academy, I had B plus A minus grades. They were good, but they weren't fantastic. That's why I had to take the SAT so many times just to get the application and everything. But he had heard about me, and he inserted himself in my life. He said, hey, if you want to go to the Naval Academy, I've heard great things about you. You're a great guy, gregarious, outgoing, fun guy. You're going to need help getting a nomination from the congressman. I know this person here that's on the town council. I can set you up with this. So he actually made a lot of introductions to me to political people, because you have to get a nomination from a congressman or a senator to go to the service academy. And again, I had no connections. And so he was instrumental in that. And so, yeah, there was quite a few people in there that just inserted themselves that, man, I tried finding him years later. He wound up being the sheriff of, I think, of the town, and then retired a number of years ago. But so, yeah, there's always people like that.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And it's good that you try to find him and thank him too, because that's huge too. Because it's like your major mentioned earlier, where it was just a passing moment for him, but decades later, it was like, oh, that was really big for you. Oh, I feel kind of bad now, but I guess it all worked out.
Yeah, no kidding. Everyone's making amends all the time. That's all you can do is show. One of the greatest things we can do for others, which is one of the greatest things we do for ourselves, show gratitude. It's one of the beauty. It's a beauty thing. It costs you nothing. It's another one of those things that costs nothing, but it takes some humility, and it's beautiful when you can give it.
That's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. Well, since your fellow podcast hosts always got an obligatory podcast host question ready to ask fellow hosts. So my goodness, so far your fabulous show, Forged by Trust, top 5% in the world, baby. It's a wonderful show indeed. What are the three major lessons you learned so far from starting, growing, and managing it, my friend?
Oh, it is the greatest thing I should have done for many, many years. It's been the most humbling experience ever when you record yourself, listen to yourself, edit yourself, and put yourself out there. I was walking with my friend who's still in the FBI today. We walk every week and still keep in touch, and we were talking about that. And besides going out for freshman football when I was an outsider, which was probably one of the bravest acts I had done in my life because it was cliquish. I was being bullied by the guys on the team, but I was like, if I want to move forward in life, I have to gut it out. I have to stand up straight and I got to dive in. And it worked out. I'd say the second bravest thing, one of them I did was doing the podcast. And here's why. So here I am. I'm retired FBI, world renowned spy recruiter, supposedly really great at interviewing and making connections and forging trust. Well, now I'm going to do it and I'm going to have people sit, listen, and judge it. So that takes some bravery. What have I learned? I was okay. What did I learn? I could be a lot better. I learned that like everything in life, mastery, no one is born awesome. We're all born about the same. What are you going to do next? Get the reps in, get the reps in. That's why I mentioned you. At the beginning, I looked at the number of episodes you got. You have reps. I hear it in your voice, your melody, your synchronicity. I mean, so it's that's what I've learned. I've learned that every day you're good, and tomorrow, if you get your rep in, you'll be better. But in order to do that, you got to be humble, self-reflective, and that it is a lot of work to put this on. So everyone listening right now, this is my shout out to your audience. Make sure you click like, make sure you share it, make sure you leave a review, because Dom puts a heck of a lot of work into this, not for him, but for you. So please, everyone go do that for him right now.
Woohoo! There we go. He gets 10 gold stars, baby. That's right, indeed. Well, I limited to 5 out of 5, 10 out of 5, baby. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Abundance mentality, indeed. So, my goodness, a fun question for you. So, if your fabulous book, Sizing People Up, a veteran's FBI agent's user manual for behavior prediction, if that book were a food, what would it be and why?
There's a food. Boy, I've never been asked that one. I love questions I've never been asked. If that book was a food, what would it be? The first image that pops in mind is blueberry just because of the color of it. Now, let me see if I can put that into a reason. Yeah, I think blueberry's good because it's got kind of a membrane on it that's kind of flavorless. But once you kind of pierce it, and it doesn't take a lot, it just takes a little bit of effort, you get this huge burst of flavor that can really heighten your senses, heighten your palate, really builds upon other things. You can add it as an additive to other dishes, but it can stand alone on its own as well. So yeah, I like blueberry.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. I believe you're the third guest, if I'm counting correctly off the top of my head. It actually said blueberries for
Really?
the book.
Oh, that's interesting. I want to know the other ones now too. I'm gonna look them up. That's a fascinating question.
Okay, indeed, gets folks to think on their feet. I do remember the first guy who said it, though. I remember the topic. It was all about decluttering his, and all because the blueberries is one of his favorite fruits, and he was like eating them before the interview. So I chose blueberries.
And it's interesting too because I am a very visual person. Visual and audio, that's like it's interesting. And so the imagery that popped in my mind as soon as you asked that was the blueberry. So and then I just had to figure out why. Interesting. Love that stuff.
That's right, indeed. So that right, folks. That means this book is good for you. Blueberries are good for you. It's a great fruit, indeed. That's right, indeed. Especially for memory, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Probably why I did it too. It's actually enhanced my memory.
Yes, indeed. I'm sure my man's been needing that for years on end, more
Yeah.
than other
Well, part of
average
it is
humans.
yeah, and part of it is just consuming more information. I listen to Audible like it's going out of style, just because movement is the best thing we do for our brains. Eating is what we do for our health, and consuming good, healthy information is what we do for our soul. And so that, and when you do that, it also keeps you incredibly. I have my stacks of books in front of me, and the ones on my bookshelf behind me are what I've read this year, and I have everything around me. And what it is a constant reminder of what I don't know. And to keep going, because every day you learn, wow, there's so much more I didn't know. So every day you wake up even more humbler if you're doing it right than the last.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Sounds like some blueberry humble pie.
Oh, your brain works beautifully.
Oh man. Well, I guess your answer to this question would be interesting because you kind of touched a little bit on it before, but heck, we're gonna ask it anyway. So we're coming down to the question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you'll wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but you're still in the current year, what advice would you give to yourself?
Yeah, that would be it. Figure out everyone else's job around you and what are you going to do to make it easier for them. Then once you do that, keep contact, make a network, make a network. And when you create that network, proactively solve people's problems, figure out their priorities, challenges, and pain points. And then as you meet someone new in your life, who can you introduce them to solve that priority in their life? I mean, it's not about how you make people feel about you that matters. It's how you make them feel about themselves. If I could have known that at 2025, I wouldn't have done anything different, just because it makes us who we are today. And today is a beautiful day. Eckhart Tolle, another favorite author of mine, The Power of Now. That now is what you got. So if now is a beautiful moment, it came from a beautiful place. So that would be what I do, is I would just keep that focus earlier on to others, because that's what leadership is. That's what service is figuring out the priorities, pain of others, and being a resource for them. And I say available resource because some people that are placed on their path, that they don't want you on their path with them. They're in a place where they are resistant, and okay, you have to give them their space when they want their space, because all you're going to do is make it worse by inserting yourself. A great friend of mine wrote another book called it's a book on conversations. His name is Jim Pyle, and his favorite thing is, don't try to lead a horse to water to drink. You can't do that. And the best thing to do is make the horse thirsty. And so how do you make people thirsty for what you're there to offer them? So I like that philosophy.
Ah, so that means the thirst is definitely real. All right, that's what I'm talking about.
You just have to spark that thirst.
There you go. That's right. So you heard that right, folks. Find somebody you need to talk to, throw them in the desert, then drag them out of there. And be like, all right.
Yeah, I guess I could go a little sideways, couldn't it? So it's interesting, so you take this metaphor, and so that's how a psychopath would take that metaphor. No, not you, of course, Dom, but so yeah, so 'cause I've been dealing with too many dark people these days that, yeah, I can see someone doing that. Oh, I'll make you thirsty. I'm gonna bring you in the middle of the Sahara and leave you. You'll want me in your life after 7 days there, won't you? Yes, I guess I will. I'm gonna go back to my friend Jim. Says he's gonna rework his quote. He's got to put some caveats in that. That's a little off. I never quite thought about it like that. It's no longer a favorite quote of mine. Tell you, Dom, you're a deep, quick thinker. It's good.
There you go. That's right, indeed. And then on day 7, you appear, be like, this ain't a mirage, baby. Come here.
You want me in your life now, don't you? Yeah. Join my cult. Yeah, it's not so
Oh,
good.
man. But the good news is my man Robin doesn't have a cult, but he probably has a cult-like following. So for those who need to join this metaphorical cult and keep up with all the wonderful things that you're doing, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Really simple and easy. Peopleformula.com is my website. All one word, peopleformula.com. There's my page to my website. I mean, to my podcast, Forged by Trust. And sign up for my newsletter. It goes out weekly. It's just an article based on the podcast episode that week. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, my Facebook page, all the typical social media stuff. I'm very communicative. I try to put out a lot of content for folks. I update the page weekly, at least, if not daily. And also the key thing too, I have a courses page on my website. I have a free course. It's on Udemy based, so it's not an upsell. I'm not trying to sell you anything. There's paid courses on there, obviously, too. But the free one is the Keys to Communication course. Is a 40-minute free course and it's free. Udemy does not collect email addresses. I don't even get your email address from it. It's totally like I screw myself by giving it away. So, but it's a great course on how to make a conversation about someone else using these 4 techniques that are in the course. I just highly encourage you to go there, take the course. It's free. Again, pass it on to someone you know. The only links in the course itself are to my podcast as examples of the different techniques I talk about.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Dive into that course indeed. That's right, indeed, because communication is a major skill that will advance your career and your life. And if you can learn it from an FBI guy who's also a retired Marine, then hey, that's freaking gold within itself. And he said it himself, he's basically screwed himself over. It ain't an upsell. So definitely jump into it. That's right, indeed. Put on bunny ears if you have to, and then jump into it. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed.
You don't have to drag you to the middle of the Sahara to get it.
I could tell that one's stuck.
That's good. Anytime, you get the podcast host laughing that hard, it's a good day.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause you never know what could pop out of this head or mouth. But hey, it's all good.
It is the best thing we can do for another human being is a good, solid laugh. So thank you.
Oh, well, my plum pleasing pleasure indeed, as the great Les Brown would say indeed. So my goodness, before any more rabbit holes appear, especially out of Sahara with the camel hump, any parting words before we close up shop?
No, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing such a great job, great prep work, and having a great methodology for a great conversation. Because the greatest thing, so if you ever find yourself in a moment of stress that you get overwhelmed, you're feeling defeated, you're feeling stressful, anxiety, resentment, all those negative thoughts and emotions, remind yourself, I should say, of this one question that I'd love to share. And that is, if you have this isn't a bucket list. Bucket list is something you do if you have a year left. If you had only 5 hours left on this planet, however you think that's going to end, 5 hours, remind yourself, what would you do with that last 5 hours? Everyone I've ever chatted with, and me and myself included, is it would be spent with the people I care most about, having a beautiful conversation, sharing laughter, sharing joy, seeing what they're doing to be successful and prosperous and happy in their lives. So remind yourself of that. If you're having a bad day, just have a great conversation. It costs nothing and anyone can do it.
If you're hearing this part of the episode, that means you're one cool individual. Thanks a bunch for tuning in, and if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to share it with at least one other person in your network. Bonus points for 3. And be sure to check out the backlog too while you're at it, because there are hundreds of wonderful episodes to choose from as well.